Imagination is everything. It is the preview of life's coming attractions. Albert Einstein, think about those words for a moment. A preview of life's coming attractions. Not a fantasy, not an escape from reality. A preview. Something shown before it appears. Something seen inwardly before it becomes visible outwardly. Most people spend their lives believing that reality creates their thoughts, but the deeper truth is that your thoughts, feelings, and inner images are constantly shaping the reality you experience. The life you are living today was first formed in consciousness, long before it appeared in physical form. Whether you realize it or not, every assumption, every expectation, every picture you repeatedly held in your mind has been contributing to the experiences you now call your life. The reason many people struggle with visualization is not because they lack imagination. Every human being imagines, every day. The problem is that most people visualize what they fear rather than what they desire. They replay problems, they rehearse disappointment, they anticipate rejection, they picture failure with incredible detail and emotional intensity. Then they wonder why life continues to reflect those same patterns back to them. The mind is always creating images, and those images are constantly influencing your emotional state. Your emotional state then influences your actions, decisions, perceptions, and ultimately your results. Consider how powerful this really is. Before any building exists, someone sees it in the mind. Before any invention changes the world, someone imagines it. Before any great achievement becomes visible, it first exists as an invisible concept held within consciousness. Everything created by human hands was first created by human imagination. If this principle is true for buildings, businesses, inventions, and masterpieces, why would it not also be true for the life you wish to experience? The challenge is that most people use visualization as a wishing technique rather than an identity technique. They imagine receiving something while secretly feeling separate from it. They visualize wealth while feeling poor. They visualize love while feeling lonely. They visualize success while identifying as a failure. This creates an internal contradiction. The image says one thing, but the self-concept says another. And when these two forces compete, self-concept almost always wins because it is the foundation upon which all experiences are built. That is why the technique you are about to understand goes far beyond simply seeing pictures in your mind. It is about entering a state of consciousness so completely that your desired reality begins to feel natural. Not forced, not desperate, natural. The goal is not merely to imagine an event. The goal is to become the version of yourself for whom that event is already normal. Imagine a person standing before a mirror. The mirror reflects exactly what stands before it. Life operates in a similar way. The outer world is constantly reflecting your dominant assumptions about yourself. If you see yourself as unworthy, life finds ways to confirm that belief. If you see yourself as capable, life begins reflecting opportunities that match that identity. The reflection changes when the person standing before the mirror changes. This is why visualization becomes extraordinarily powerful when combined with feeling. Feeling is the bridge between imagination and manifestation. A mental picture without feeling is often weak and fleeting. But when you emotionally enter the scene, something remarkable happens. Your subconscious mind begins accepting the imagined experience as real. It does not carefully separate physical reality from vividly felt inner reality. It responds to emotional conviction. Think about a dream. While dreaming, your body reacts to events that are not physically happening. Your heart can race. Your breathing can change. You can feel fear, excitement, joy, or sadness. The body responds because the mind experiences the scene as real. In many ways, effective visualization operates on a similar principle. The more vividly and emotionally you experience your desired reality, the more deeply you impress it upon the subconscious mind. But there is another secret that few people understand. The most effective visualization is often simple. People believe they need to create elaborate mental movies lasting 30 minutes or more. Yet one short scene, repeated consistently and felt deeply, can have tremendous power. A simple handshake congratulating you on your success. A loved one smiling proudly at you. Seeing your name on a document that confirms your achievement. Standing in a place that represents your fulfilled desire. The scene itself is less important than the feeling of fulfillment it generates. When you enter such a scene, resist the temptation to look at your desire from the outside. Experience it from the first person perspective. See through your own eyes. Hear the sounds around you. Feel the textures. Notice the details. Most importantly, feel the emotional certainty that your desire has already become reality. Not because you are pretending, not because you are forcing belief, but because for those moments, you are allowing consciousness to dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled. Many people become discouraged because they visualize for a few days and see no immediate change. Yet they fail to realize that they spent years conditioning themselves into their current state. Deep patterns do not always dissolve overnight. The purpose of visualization is not to wrestle reality into submission. It is to transform yourself internally until the external world naturally reflects that transformation. Every time you return to your chosen scene, you are planting seeds in the fertile soil of consciousness. A farmer does not dig up seeds every morning to check whether they are growing. He trusts the process. He waters the soil. He remains faithful to the unseen activity taking place beneath the surface. In the same way, your responsibility is not to force outcomes. Your responsibility is to remain faithful to the inner vision. And as you continue practicing this technique, something subtle begins to happen. Your reactions start changing. Your expectations shift. Opportunities that once seemed invisible become noticeable. Ideas arrive unexpectedly. Confidence emerges where doubt once lived. The world has not suddenly changed around you. Rather, your consciousness is changing. And because consciousness is changing, your experience of reality begins changing as well. This is where the true journey begins. Because visualization is not merely about creating a single result. It is about understanding the relationship between imagination, identity, and reality itself. And once you begin to grasp that relationship, you discover an even deeper principle, one that explains why some imagined desires appear effortlessly while others seem delayed, and why mastering this principle can transform every area of your life. The moment you begin to understand that reality is responding to consciousness, a new question naturally arises. If imagination is so powerful, why do some visualizations seem to manifest quickly while others appear to remain distant? Why do some people imagine a desired outcome and watch it unfold almost effortlessly, while others spend months or even years visualizing with little visible change? The answer often has less to do with the quality of the visualization and more to do with the state of being that follows it. Many people treat visualization as an event. They close their eyes for 10 minutes, imagine their desire, feel inspired, and then spend the rest of the day thinking, speaking, and reacting from the opposite state. They visualize abundance and then spend hours worrying about lack. They imagine harmonious relationships and then continually rehearse old hurts and disappointments. They see themselves successful during meditation, but identify with limitation throughout daily life. Consciousness responds most strongly not to occasional moments, but to dominant states. A dominant state is the identity you repeatedly occupy. It is the mental and emotional home you return to again and again. Visualization becomes powerful when it helps establish a new dominant state, rather than serving as a temporary escape from an old one. Imagine someone who wishes to experience greater success. Every night they visualize achieving their goals. They see themselves thriving. They feel accomplishment. But during the day, they constantly tell themselves that success is difficult, that opportunities are scarce, and that others are more qualified than they are. Which message do you think reaches the subconscious mind most deeply? The 10 minutes of visualization or the many hours of self doubt? The subconscious accepts what is repeated most consistently and felt most naturally. This is why the technique is not complete when you open your eyes. In many ways, that is when the real work begins. The visualization session plants the seed, but your daily state determines whether you nourish it or uproot it. Every thought, every reaction, every assumption either supports the new identity or strengthens the old one. There is a profound difference between wanting something and being the person who already possesses it. Wanting often implies separation. It carries the feeling that what you desire exists somewhere outside of you. Being is entirely different. Being carries the feeling of ownership, certainty, and naturalness. When you truly embody a state, you stop chasing it because psychologically you already occupy it. Think about something you unquestionably possess. Perhaps it is your name. You do not spend your day wondering whether your name belongs to you. You do not fear losing it every few minutes. You do not repeatedly seek evidence that it exists. There is a calm certainty. That certainty is powerful because it is free from struggle. In the same way, when a desired reality becomes natural within consciousness, it begins carrying that same quality of certainty. One of the greatest obstacles to manifestation is the constant search for evidence. People visualize and then immediately begin examining the outer world for signs. They look for proof. They monitor circumstances. They measure progress every day. But this behavior often reveals that they are still identifying with the absence of what they desire. Imagine ordering a package that you know is already on its way. You may occasionally check its status, but you do not spend every waking hour questioning whether it exists. Your certainty allows you to continue with your life. The same principle applies to consciousness. The more convinced you become inwardly, the less desperate you become for external confirmation. This does not mean pretending that challenges do not exist. It means refusing to grant temporary appearances more authority than your chosen state. Life may occasionally present circumstances that seem to contradict your vision. In those moments, many people abandon their inner conviction and return to old assumptions. Yet these moments are often tests of persistence. Consider a ship crossing a vast ocean. The captain does not change course every time a wave appears. He remains committed to the destination despite temporary conditions. Similarly, the disciplined mind remains loyal to its vision, even when appearances seem uncertain. The individual who persists in a chosen state often discovers that circumstances eventually reorganize themselves in ways that once seemed impossible. Another important aspect of this technique involves understanding emotional attachment. Many people become emotionally attached to a specific path through which their desire must arrive. They decide exactly how events should unfold, who should participate, and when everything should happen. Then they become frustrated when reality chooses a different route. Yet consciousness often operates through channels that the logical mind cannot anticipate. Opportunities arise unexpectedly. Connections form through unlikely circumstances. Solutions appear from directions that were previously invisible. When you become overly attached to one particular path, you may miss the many others that are available. The deeper wisdom is to remain faithful to the end result while remaining flexible about the journey. Focus on the fulfilled state rather than controlling every detail of its arrival. The seed knows how to become a tree without your constant interference. Your role is to maintain the vision and allow life to organize itself around it. As this understanding deepens, you begin noticing something remarkable. The quality of your inner conversation starts changing. The voice that once criticized you becomes quieter. The habit of imagining negative outcomes begins losing its grip. A new internal dialogue emerges, one aligned with possibility rather than limitation. This transformation is significant because much of life is shaped by what happens in moments when nobody else is watching. The conversations you have with yourself influence your emotional state. Your emotional state influences your actions. Your actions influence your experiences. Everything is connected. When visualization is combined with disciplined inner conversation, a powerful shift occurs. Instead of mentally rehearsing failure, you rehearse fulfillment. Instead of reliving old disappointments, you cultivate new assumptions. Instead of asking, "What if it doesn't happen?" you begin naturally thinking from the perspective of someone for whom it already has. At first, this may feel unfamiliar. The old identity may attempt to pull you back into familiar patterns. Doubt may arise, fear may appear. Past experiences may whisper that change is impossible. But every great transformation involves moving beyond what feels familiar. Growth requires occupying a new state before it becomes comfortable. And this leads us to one of the most important discoveries on the entire journey: the realization that visualization is not simply changing future events. It is gradually changing the person who experiences those events. As this shift becomes stronger, you begin entering a level of consciousness where manifestation feels less like effort and more like a natural expression of who you have become. It is at this stage that the technique reveals its deepest power, and that is exactly where our journey continues next. There comes a point in this journey when you begin to realize that the greatest obstacle was never the world around you. It was never the economy, other people, bad luck, timing, or circumstances. The greatest obstacle was the invisible image you carried of yourself. Every experience you have is filtered through self concept. You do not merely attract what you want, you consistently move toward what feels consistent with who you believe you are. This is why two people can stand before the same opportunity and experience completely different outcomes. The other sees risk. One sees a doorway. The other sees a wall. The external situation may be identical, yet their inner assumptions create entirely different realities. What separates them is not intelligence, talent, or luck. It is identity. When visualization begins transforming your self concept, life starts responding in ways that seem almost mysterious. You carry yourself differently. You speak differently. You notice different opportunities. You make different decisions. You interpret events through a different lens. The change appears external, but it originates from within. Many people mistakenly believe that confidence comes after success. They think they will feel worthy when the money arrives, when the relationship appears, when the recognition comes, or when the goal is achieved. But consciousness operates in the opposite direction. First comes the internal state. Then comes the external reflection. The feeling of worthiness is not the reward, it is the cause. Imagine standing in a dark room holding a lantern. Wherever you direct the light, that area becomes visible. Consciousness functions similarly. Whatever state you consistently illuminate with attention becomes more active in your experience. If your attention remains fixed on limitation, limitation becomes more visible. If your attention rests upon possibility, possibility becomes more visible. This is why mental discipline is so important. Not because every thought instantly creates reality, but because repeated thoughts eventually become beliefs, and beliefs shape perception. The disciplined mind understands that attention is a creative force. It refuses to waste that force on endless fears, imagined disasters, and limiting assumptions. Now consider something deeper. Most people spend their lives reacting to appearances. Something happens, and they immediately allow the event to dictate their emotional state. Good news arrives, and they feel empowered. Bad news arrives, and they feel defeated. Their inner world becomes dependent upon external circumstances. But true mastery begins when you reverse this process. Instead of allowing circumstances to determine your state, you allow your chosen state to determine how you respond to circumstances. This may sound simple, but it is transformational. It means that even when challenges appear, you remain anchored. Even when delays occur, you remain faithful. Even when things seem uncertain, you refuse to surrender your inner vision. This stability generates tremendous power because it frees you from becoming emotionally controlled by temporary appearances. Think about the ocean. On the surface, waves rise and fall constantly. Storms come and go. Winds shift direction. Yet deep beneath the surface, there is remarkable stillness. Most people live like the waves. Their emotions rise and fall according to every event. But the person who understands consciousness learns to live from the deeper level. They become rooted in an inner certainty that remains steady regardless of external conditions. Visualization becomes extraordinarily effective when it is performed from this place of inner stability. You are no longer visualizing because you desperately need something to happen. You are visualizing because you understand who you are. You are no longer begging reality to change. You are expressing a new state of consciousness. At this stage, something fascinating begins occurring. The feeling of chasing disappears. The feeling of forcing disappears. The feeling of struggle begins dissolving. Instead, you experience a quiet confidence that cannot easily be shaken. This confidence is different from arrogance. Arrogance seeks validation. Confidence requires none. Arrogance depends on appearances. Confidence originates from inner knowing. The person who truly understands the power of visualization does not need constant reassurance. because they have learned to trust the creative process. There is another shift that often happens during this phase. You begin becoming more selective about what you allow into your mind. You realize that every conversation, every piece of information, every assumption, and every emotional reaction contributes to your inner atmosphere. Imagine attempting to grow a beautiful garden while constantly planting weeds. The results would be predictable. Yet many people do exactly this mentally. They spend a few moments visualizing their dreams and then spend hours feeding fear, doubt, resentment, criticism, and negativity. The inner garden becomes crowded with conflicting seeds. The wise individual learns to guard consciousness carefully, not through fear, but through awareness. They understand that the mind is sacred creative territory. They choose thoughts that support their vision. They nurture assumptions that align with their desired reality. They become intentional about what they repeatedly accept as true. Over time, this intentional living creates profound inner transformation. The person who once doubted their worth begins recognizing their value. The person who once feared failure begins expecting success. The person who once felt powerless begins discovering their creative authority. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this process is that it extends beyond individual goals. At first, you may use visualization to manifest specific outcomes: a relationship, financial freedom, a career opportunity, improved health. These desires are valid and meaningful. But eventually, you discover something greater. You realize that the true gift was never the manifestation itself. The true gift was the transformation of consciousness. The goal brought you to the journey, but the journey revealed your power. You began seeking external change, yet you discovered internal mastery. You started by trying to create a different life, but along the way you became a different person. And when that realization takes root, visualization evolves into something far more profound than a technique. It becomes a way of living, a way of seeing, a way of relating to reality itself. Yet there remains one final piece of the puzzle, one principle that ties everything together. It is the difference between occasionally imagining a better future and becoming someone whose entire life reflects the power of conscious creation. It is the secret that allows visualization to move beyond temporary results and become a permanent transformation of being. And once you understand this final principle, you will never look at your imagination or your future the same way again. Man is made by his belief. As he believes, so he is. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, those words contain a truth so profound that entire lifetimes can be spent discovering their meaning. As he believes, so he is. Not as he hopes, not as he wishes, not as he occasionally imagines, as he believes. Belief is the invisible architecture of experience. It shapes perception, directs attention, influences behavior, and ultimately determines the reality that unfolds before us. And this brings us to the final principle. The principle that transforms visualization from a practice you do occasionally into a way of being that changes your life from the inside out. The final principle is persistence in identity. Most people think manifestation is about getting something. They focus on the outcome, the event, the achievement, the relationship, the opportunity. But consciousness is always asking a deeper question: who are you being? Because whatever you consistently are in consciousness eventually becomes visible in experience. Imagine a musician. They do not become a musician only when standing on a stage. They become one through repeated identification, practice, and embodiment. Long before the audience applauds, the identity has already formed. In the same way, the person who consistently occupies the state of their fulfilled desire eventually sees that state reflected in life. This is why persistence matters so much. Not persistence in effort, struggle, or force, but persistence in consciousness, returning again and again to the chosen state until it feels natural, returning to the vision when doubts arise, returning to the feeling when circumstances seem contrary, returning to the identity until it becomes more familiar than the old version of yourself. There will be moments when the outer world appears unchanged. There will be days when progress seems invisible. There may even be times when circumstances appear to move in the opposite direction. These moments often cause people to abandon their vision. They conclude that nothing is happening because they cannot yet see physical evidence. Yet some of the most important transformations occur beneath the surface. When a seed is planted, the first activity is invisible. Roots develop before branches appear. Strength forms before growth becomes visible. The same is true in consciousness. The unseen changes often precede the seen changes. What appears stagnant on the outside may be undergoing profound transformation within. The individual who understands this does not become discouraged by temporary appearances. They understand that imagination is not competing with reality. Imagination is shaping reality. They continue nurturing the inner vision because they know that consciousness is always moving toward expression. As this understanding deepens, fear begins losing its authority. Fear thrives on imagined limitations. It projects unwanted futures and asks you to accept them as inevitable. But once you recognize the creative power of imagination, you stop surrendering that power to fear. You begin directing it intentionally. Instead of imagining what could go wrong, you consciously imagine what can go right. Instead of rehearsing defeat, you rehearse fulfillment. This shift may seem subtle, yet it changes everything. The future is influenced not only by what you do, but also by what you repeatedly assume. Every assumption is a seed. Every belief is a blueprint. Every inner image is a potential reality seeking expression. When you understand this, you stop treating your imagination casually. You begin treating it as one of the most valuable gifts you possess. There is something beautiful that happens when a person truly accepts this principle. They stop living in reaction to life and begin living from creation. They no longer see themselves as victims of circumstance. They recognize themselves as participants in the unfolding of reality. This recognition generates a profound sense of freedom. Freedom does not mean controlling every event. It means understanding that your inner state remains your responsibility regardless of external conditions. It means knowing that you always have the ability to choose a new assumption, embrace a new identity, and cultivate a new vision. The world often teaches people to look outward for power. It tells them that fulfillment depends upon circumstances, approval, possessions, or achievements. Yet the deeper truth is that lasting transformation begins within. The outer world may offer opportunities, but consciousness determines how those opportunities are perceived and experienced. This is why the greatest manifestation is not money, status, relationships, or success. The greatest manifestation is awakening to your own creative nature. Once that awakening occurs, every area of life becomes different. Challenges become opportunities for growth. Delays become opportunities for faith. Obstacles become opportunities for persistence. Life itself becomes a classroom through which consciousness learns its own power. And so, as you move forward from this moment, remember this: the images you consistently hold matter. The assumptions you repeatedly entertain matter. The identity you embrace matters. Every day, whether intentionally or unconsciously, you are shaping the direction of your experience. Choose your inner conversations wisely. Choose your assumptions deliberately. Choose your vision courageously. When you visualize, do not merely see the future you desire. Become the person who naturally belongs in that future. Feel the reality of it. Walk in the spirit of it. Think from it rather than about it. Allow it to become familiar. Allow it to become natural. Allow it to become part of who you are. Because the moment a new state becomes natural within consciousness, the process of external expression is already underway. Your imagination is not a toy. It is not an escape. It is not a meaningless stream of mental pictures passing through the mind. It is one of the most powerful creative faculties you possess. Properly directed, it can reshape your expectations, transform your identity, elevate your actions, and open pathways that previously seemed impossible. The life you desire does not begin on some distant day in the future. It begins in consciousness. It begins with a decision. It begins with a vision. And it begins the moment you stop seeing yourself as someone waiting for change and start seeing yourself as someone capable of embodying it now. For when the inner vision becomes clear, when the feeling becomes natural, and when the identity becomes established, life has a remarkable way of reflecting back the reality you first dared to create within.